to screw it up less next time, although
Yeah.
we can't possibly screw it up as badly as the city is screwing this up.
And welcome to an impromptu episode of This Week in Worcester podcast. I am Tom Marino, editor of This Week in Worcester. I am not here with co-host John Edward Keogh. So a couple housekeeping things real quick before we get to the circus that emerged at City Hall on Tuesday, the 28th of April. First, podcast has gone dark because Mr. Keogh, who is also president of Hollywood Film Group, has some projects on his plate right now, including Burning Down the House, a documentary on the status of firehouses around Massachusetts, and so he's needed to focus on that, and thus, and that's understandably so. So that has caused the darkness of the podcast. Am working on trying to line up some interviews and guests and whatnot, and we'll keep you informed. And also, just a teaser, some cool stuff coming to the website soon. Okay. So, it's I'm recording this on Thursday, the 30th, and I'm still a little exhausted from what anyone who watched and those who participated in said meeting on Tuesday had to endure, because it was a lot. It was a lot. So we're going to talk about 4 different topics that they talked about on Tuesday. Chickens, the ability for Worcester residents to have chickens so they can eat, a resolution on the potential ballot question about rescinding the legalization of marijuana. They had an item related to mental health or emergency response to mental health issues, and the headliner of the whole thing, the specialized stretch code. As I probably already edited this, you can tell that I did not record this. I did not do this live. There's a bunch of moving parts here, and I'll probably screw it up. And so I wanted the chance to edit. I also have a bunch of clips from Tuesday that I've trimmed way down for time. So, some of these have the comments from councilors have been edited even within the clip to cut out, stuff that we don't need to discuss. So if you want everything in its full context, you can go see the full meeting at the City of Worcester's YouTube page. I assure you, none of the meaning has been lost in what they were saying. We don't have to make stuff up. They say ridiculous things on their own. So let's pipe in some videos. We're going to start off with the chickens issue, only because some things happened. First, Council Toomey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been on both sides of this argument. I've been for it, I've been against it. And for me, the biggest issue is equity. The majority of people who have the yardage and the land and the ability and to have the space and for these chickens, and most people who are living in the inner city do not have that. And if
that's not what equity means. Oh boy. So since this meeting, Giselle Rivera Flores posted a really good piece on what equity actually means. It's called "When Correction Becomes an Accusation." It's on her Substack. It's on her Substack, Hispanic-ish. I'm just going to read 2 lines. Equity is not about flattening every situation until no one can name need. Equity is about recognizing that different communities experience different barriers and may require different supports to reach fair outcomes. Oh boy. So continuing on.
You're talking about food equity and all that stuff. Those folks that people are saying, oh, but what about the people who just want to have the eggs to help feed their family and all of that stuff? I get it. My heart breaks for people, but you know what? It's a health issue. It's a health issue in terms of making sure that the community is healthy, that you're not inviting diseases. And we know that happens, right? If you don't take care of the chickens right. But the point is, it's an equity issue.
Good Lord. So the administration's reasoning for recommending that they continue to not allow people to own chickens in the city is largely the resources and bandwidth to create a licensing process and administer that process and enforcement was largely their argument. I don't want to go down the wormhole of this issue, but as you can imagine, some councilors did not find it appropriate to be invoking equity, basically with the wrong definition. Here we go. First, Louis Ojeda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know. I was concerned of hearing it being equitable and needed acreage and stuff like we needed so much yard space. The reality is you don't need that much yard space. So I just want to make sure we understand that residents will be watching this and it doesn't. I don't think it matters your income or class you're in or whatever it may be. And I'm not saying this because I'm against it or for it, but let's not just say you have to fit in some type of category to be able to do this. And it's important that we get that out there and let residents know that it doesn't matter, what economical status you're in.
Perfectly reasonable from Councilor Ojeda. Councilor King.
Boston has an ordinance. And again, we're not Boston, but I hear a lot of we can't. We want to attract people. Well, this will attract people. It'll attract more people than it propels away from the city of Worcester. And in Boston, as Councilor Ojeda astutely stated, it doesn't take a whole lot of space. I also reject the exclamation of equity as an aspect of this. But, in that ordinance in our capital in this state, it requires, a number of things.
Was there anything objectionable there? Just wondered. I didn't think so. Councilor Toomey asked you and received recognition to speak once again.
Mr. Mayor, I just rise. There were a couple of comments that
Councilor Toomey
implied that I had some bias and perhaps even implicated that I was racist with my.
What? Who said? That was the only two things said that even referred to the comment about equity. That's it. Nobody brought it up again. What's she talking about? Is the new everything is racist now somebody calling me a racist? I just can't. Back to Councilor Toomey, who will be shortly joined in this conversation.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
That has nothing, excuse
That's
me,
out
I'm
of order,
speaking.
Mr.
I'm
Chairman.
speaking.
That was never
I'm
stated. No
speaking.
one called this woman racist. No one called her biased.
Excuse
Hang
me.
on one second. Hang on, please, hang on.
Rule her out of order, Mr. Chairman. That is out of order. It's a false statement. No one called her biased. No one called her racist. I'm asking you, Mr. Chairman.
No, I don't think,
rule her
we
comments
already
out of order.
move on. We are moving on, Kate.
Rule her comments out of order, Mr.
I
Chairman.
don't think that was
It's
his
out of
intention.
order.
No.
It was
It's out of order, Mr.
Was not
Chairman.
his intention.
I'm sorry, and I agree with Councilor King.
It's out
that-
of order, Mr. Chairman.
Council,
Nothing was implied in that way.
Lead the
Okay,
council,
let's move
Mr.
on.
Chairman.
Could we rewind
Lead
the
the
tape?
Do you have anything
council.
else you want to say,
Out
Councilor
of
Toomey?
I do,
believe
but
order.
I
that
just
word is
wanted to
actually
make
used
sure
right
that
now.
people
Thank
know
you.
that that had nothing
Order,
to do
Mr.
with.
Chairman.
We're good.
Out of
Okay,
order.
so the motion is to file. Roll call.
Well then, I don't know what she's talking about. This isn't the first time that I felt that way with this counselor. But nonetheless, that was interesting. I'm not well versed on the intricacies of Robert's rules. I don't know if it was out of order. It was a false claim because nobody said any of those things nor implied them in any way. If those comments do qualify as out of order, don't blame Councilor King for asking that they be held. So, the mayor's not going to do that. I don't think he's ever done that that I remember in the last several years with anyone in his defense. But it was an interesting exchange, and the night did not get less interesting. So, moving on to the next item that we're going to cover here. Council Rosen had a resolution that the council oppose the ballot question that would recriminalize use of marijuana for recreational purposes. It would force all the dispensaries that you see all over the place now to go to serving for medical, which would put most of them out of business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we usually discuss and take votes on supporting legislation and other efforts in the community, but this is important, I think, to the city of Worcester. We have, I believe, up to 15, I think we hit 15 pot shops here in the city of Worcester, and some of them are minority owned and they employ a lot of people, and the revenue throughout the city has been strong from the pot shops. We started out the first few years, I think 2019 to around 2023, and we collected $5 million in community impact fees. Then we had to stop collecting them across the state. I think no one collects those any longer, but that was early on we collected that. And it looks like just some of the figures I dug out, 400 pot shops statewide. What are we going to do? Close all those down with all the employees? And especially where it's been, really, good revenue for the city of Worcester and for the state. 140 licensed farms to cultivate, legalized licensed farms to cultivate marijuana. And over $1 billion in state and local taxes have been raised. $8 billion in gross sales. This has been very successful in the city of Worcester and throughout the Commonwealth. And to actually, and I wasn't in favor of it several years ago when it first came up. I didn't support it, I wasn't in favor of it. But I was wrong. It turned out to be very good for the city of Worcester, for the Commonwealth financially, and for those who, certainly, imbibe in marijuana. They seem to think this is good legislation.
So that was, part of Councilor Rosen's introduction. He also said that this is, this ballot question is just bad legislation and will be a disaster. Next on this topic is Councilor Bergman.
And I didn't vote for it either. What I'm referring to is the legalization. I'm not suggesting it should be made illegal, but I'm very conflicted on this item, and I'll share with you why. The reasons I was not in favor initially of legalizing marijuana are no different today than they were when it was legalized. The CDC, which is no insignificant institution, came out of many reports on this. Cannabis likely can contribute to cannabis use disorder, which is an addiction. Brain function doesn't fully form till age 25. There's a suggestion that smoking marijuana prior to that age could affect brain function. Heart health, lung health, mental health, including depression, anxiety, and schizophrenia, all contribute, according to the CDC. And driving. There's still no measure of telling whether or not somebody's driving under the influence of marijuana, so it's not necessarily a safety issue. It is a safety issue to the public. It's not necessarily without pitfalls or potential harm. So whether it's successful monetarily or not doesn't really matter to me. I still have the same concerns that I had 2 years ago. So when I'm faced with this resolution, on one hand, I don't want to support it because I, quite frankly, don't think we should have voted for it originally. On the other hand, I do agree with what's already been said, that there are monies that are out there now because of the fees and the financial success of some of these facilities. They contribute to a lot of good programs, and as government does best, Now that we're spending the money, I don't know if we can figure out how to not spend the money, because we would have to do away with some very good programs.
So I'd just like to point out, and this is really my own pet peeve here. Gotta share something different with you here real quick. This is the National Library of Medicine. This is part of the National Institute of Health. A paper that they're citing here. It's a bit old. It is 2012. August 2012 this was released. So, and it's measuring harm of different types of drugs. Because of 2012, fentanyl's not on here, and that's generally now ranked near the top, if not the top. There's a lot of studies about this that you can look at different interpretations, but they're, in order of what is most dangerous and not, they're kind of the same. They're generally the same. So here's a table of, personal harm score, social harm score, and then total combined score. Here is alcohol. That's legal. People drive and kill themselves and others all the time with alcohol. And here's cannabis at the bottom. And I mean, things that are, according to this, less dangerous than alcohol, or, less harmful than alcohol. Inhaled solvents, which was pretty shocking to me. Cocaine, nicotine, which is a little weird. Benzos, ketamine, barbiturates, etc. And they have, by the way, tramadol, codeine, ranked higher as harmful than cannabis. So now we just accept alcohol for the rest of our lives, but cannabis we can still be weird about. I don't understand it, folks. And I'm not suggesting, I mean, I would sometimes facetiously challenge people that make this argument about cannabis. I'm waiting for your advocacy on, in this case, and on, I'd say I'm waiting for your resolution on making Worcester a dry city, which would be, of course, political suicide. You won't do that. And I don't blame them, because it's a dumb idea. Moving on. Next on this was Council Rosen again.
If this passes, besides ruining many businesses, costing a lot of jobs and so on, taking away the rights that people have had for the last many years to smoke and cultivate marijuana, I would hate to see that the sale and use of marijuana returns to the black market like we had for years, for decades. That would be just, foolish to do. So I understand where Councilor Bergman is coming from. I opposed it at the beginning too, but it's been with us and people, use it. You can make the same arguments that Councilor Bergman just made for tobacco, but it's legal. You can make the same arguments for alcohol, but it's legal.
So Councilor Rosen making sense, as he often does. Not always, but often. And some words from Council King on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did in fact vote for this. And some great points were brought up as relates to the fact that we have legalized alcoholism, which is a much more, detriment to a society overall. And I also speak as someone who's never smoked marijuana, never tried alcohol. So it's not a matter of personal indulgence or anything of that nature. Look at sentencing disparities for possession of marijuana. They're significant. They absolutely was considered as it relates to legalizing of marijuana.
So agreed. And certainly sentencing disparities, I mean, in many ways drove, or at least in part drove, the push for legalization. So I thought those two items were interesting. Here we go. The circus continues. Now we're on to an order from Council Toomey asking for what is the current procedures, processes, policies, etc., related to emergency response to mental health issues, people experiencing mental health crisis. There was a little confusion on the floor of the council, and so Councilor King ended up speaking first. Usually it's the person who brings the order, but here we go.
This came out of city manager's executive order in response to matters that I filed and the council supported relative to a differential response for the Worcester PD for mental health calls. I've continually asked for metrics and data as relates to this, and I don't believe we've quite received that yet. So I appreciate the spirit of this particular order. It came to my surprise when I heard that it was being sunsetted and transitioned into another form, particularly because that pilot program that lasted for a year, we had allocated $1 million for, that, you know, they were just at the point where things were kind of coming together, and they were looking for some more funding, some more staffing, some increased hours, et cetera. We were using CRT vans with very clearly identifying uniforms and logos on the van. That's all gone, Mr. Chairman. These folks were dispatched by 911 7 days a week, only from 3 to 11 p.m.
A program that the city piloted. It was something called for from the previous city manager at Augustus, and they put it, put out to bid, developing this program and operating it. And they awarded Community Health Link, which is now in the process of shutting down, which is owned by UMass. They ran the pilot and then it ended very quietly because I didn't know it ended. And that's something I'm quite interested in. This program that, sends people who are experienced in dealing with people experiencing mental health crisis to the scenes of where people are having a mental health crisis. We should not and cannot continue. It will continue to end in disaster if we continue to expect police officers to be police officers and pastors and social workers and psychologists and marriage counselors and everything else under the sun. The just send the cops thing needs to stop. It is part of the problem is we put officers in positions where they are either not capable of, or maybe a mixture of not being capable of and not having the experience and training to deal with some of these problems. We should ask cops to be cops. We should ask them to arrest people who commit crimes, and obviously investigate and then arrest people who commit crimes and close cases accurately. And that should be their job, and we should leave them to do that, not all of this other crap. Now, after that, Councilor Toomey to speak on her order.
This order is about understanding where we are today and where we need to go to continue to better respond to mental health emergencies as a city. I'm asking for a clear picture of what is currently in place. What are we doing today? This has nothing to do with past practices or issues or whatever. It's like, what are we doing today?
What? That's like, I don't know. I'm reminded of a former professor at, I think it was BC, now passed away, Howard Zinn. He wrote People's History of the United States. Controversial book in some circles, but nonetheless. If I remember correctly, it was a clip of him visiting a high school. And, if the kid said something to the effect of, like, I don't like history. And, his response was, it's important to study history because if you don't, then they can tell you that anything happened and you have no choice but to believe them. You have no interest in how we got here?
What protocols are being used by the police department and emergency communications when a mental health call comes in? How often are clinicians and mental health professionals involved in those responses today? I want to know what training is being provided to officers and dispatchers around crisis intervention currently. Understanding effectiveness, what data do we have on outcomes? Are we seeing reductions in repeat calls and hospitalizations and arrests? Where are we seeing success? Where are the gaps? And focus on coordination. How integrated is the response? And from all of the anecdotal information that I've gotten from people, that the crisis intervention team is doing a great job. out there in the community. What systems are in place for real-time coordination between police, dispatch, and mental health? And looking ahead for expansion opportunities, I'd like to ask a report to include recommendations for continued expansion, including increasing the co-response teams, our clinician availability, enhancing dispatch triage, strengthening partnerships with local providers, and exploring alternative response models where appropriate.
So, I gotta say, kind of surprised that Council 2 is behind this because, often you will hear officers complaining that this is a stupid idea and that doing this is stupid. I think that's more about protecting, their money than anything. But that's just my, personal sense. Doesn't mean it's accurate. So, kind of surprised that Council 2 is behind this. But the thing, we're not talking about the past. I mean, I've heard this before from this counselor when I'm saying, are we going to ever deal with the things that have happened in the past at the police department that we know have happened, that weren't, the result of the conspiracy theory of fake cops and whatever else, other nonsense they spewed. And, her response, as at least on one occasion, was, I'm focused on the future. Well, how did we get here? It's ridiculous. Councilor Blada.
What clinical co-response is happening right now? With this, just to clarify, is that with WPD, is there a program happening, or did that sunset? I'm just unclear.
Mr. Manager?
Yeah, through the chair to the council, there's some level of work that's happening with the PD. And we're working through a report to be able to bring to the council. We just want to be sensitive to some of the details that are provided in that report as we go through the process of the litigation issue that we have, that we were served and we were sued as a city for this purpose.
See, and you're going to hear more of this. They're going to continue to say, oh, but the lawsuit, we can't talk about that. Well, fix the problem and there's no lawsuit. Maybe if you had picked up the phone when these people try to call you, according to them, you could have been proactive instead of the only thing that the city government does is be reactive.
And so we want to be mindful to that. We have some meetings coming up to address some of those issues and the litigation as well. But again, we look forward to bringing forward and being transparent with this information.
And let me be even more clear. You've already screwed this up. I don't really care about your lawsuit. Fix it. Priorities. Screw the people that are, experiencing mental health crisis and are not getting, the response necessary to deal with the actual problem that's happening. We have a lawsuit.
With respect to the mobile crisis response and CHL, are they currently involved with co-response with police? Are they not involved?
Mr. Manager?
Through the chair to the council, CHL currently is not involved in any correspondence with police right now.
And what agency is, through the chair?
Through the chair to the council, my understanding is right now we have staff that works in the department, and there's some clinicians and CIT officers that help in that. So again, those are the details that we look to bring forward as part of the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the CHL, there was not a pivot to a different agency or to CHL to assume different duties once that pilot closed. I thought that pilot closed in January of 2025.
Mr. Manager?
Through the chair to the council. So one of the challenges of the CHL has to do with the ability to how do you fee for service and how do you bill for this product. And so there's a certain certification that an agency needs to have to be able to do this work. And that's what's been at kind of in the discussion between UMass, between CHL, the state entities, etc. That is what we've been trying to kind of put together in a report that we can submit to council so we can articulate with specificity some of the challenges and some of the issues that we would have to face moving forward. a lot of that may be
We would
addressed
have
as
to
part of
face.
this effort that's happening with
Would.
CHL.
Like, as in that's in
and the
question.
transition with
I'm telling you,
the
they're gonna do
actual,
everything they can to kill us. They really
programs
are.
that they're going through. And so,
and
it,
look, that's
it's
not an
related to a
insignificant
particular
problem.
certification.
You know,
It's
if
basically called
there's issues with
CDHC,
being able to bill
in
because
which
of regulation bill,
are able to
you know,
bill
to
for these
provide
type
an
of
invoice
services.
and get paid,
Thank
people
you,
need to
Mr.
get paid.
Chairman. It's my
And
understanding
if
that
there's a problem there
there
because
was
of
a deficit
regulation,
of a few $100,000
you know, I get
during the
it.
pilot
But I mean,
program.
I
and
also
that,
just have a general
in order
distaste
to
for,
effectively do the work,
you know,
we need
billing being the
3
impediment
times the
to
amount, 3 times the 1
making
million
sure that
that
we're
we put
delivering
in
services
to have some
that people actually need
increased
when they need them.
efficacy with regards to co-response, Mr. Chairman. So,
So,
you
like,
know,
I want to
again, I
yell
just want to
about
be
that part,
clear.
but at the same time, people do
This
need to get paid,
report,
so I get it's a problem.
it's written kind of funny.
And then,
I'm assuming
once again, Councilor
that
Toomey.
it's not just going to be processed, that we're going to get an idea of what was what was encompassed the
I lied.
pilot
That is not Councilor Toomey.
co-response model that we had, and what's not being replicated by CIT and what have you, because we need to make sure that we're filling those gaps.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To be very clear, this motion that I filed here is about where we are right now and what we need to do moving forward, and not discussing about all of this other stuff. It's like, let's move on and create a great program here within the department.
It's unreal. Not worry about that. So, all of the things that we did wrong in the past, we don't need to know those things. If there were other things we did wrong, or if there's things we did right, or just, nope, start everything today. Because if we look back, we might find things we did wrong, and then somebody at the police department might get offended or get their feelings hurt or something, and that is her whole purpose in life, is to protect the feelings of people at the police department. No. It's just ignorant. It's just ignorant. Although, what happens next is hilarious.
Including, excuse me?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought my mute was on.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I said flying blind. My bad. I thought my mute was on.
You know, take him at his word. He said he didn't know his mute was on. Mute wasn't on. Either way, hysterical. Just ignorant, though. This is just ignorant. Flying blind is a good way to put it. Just, you know, it doesn't matter what happened before today. I mean, well, what if the policy was developed before today? You know, everything that happened before today is irrelevant. We can only have, does that include like what we know? Doesn't even make any sense. This is how badly, and Councilor Toomey's not the only one. This is how badly these people just follow themselves to, you know, protect the honor or whatever. There's no honor in being wrong. What does it even mean? I'm worried about what we're doing today. Okay, well, what are we going to do next? Is that going to be the same thing we did in the past that didn't work? Can't, no, not allowed to. Just stupid. Like, being willfully ignorant because we need to protect people's feelings. Big tough guys, too. But you know, certain people over there, not everybody, because as I always say, there's plenty of wonderful people over there that do the job or try to do the job the right way. You know, and then there's crybabies who cry victim about everything. Oh my God, that makes me furious. And obviously I've seen it before because I cut the video. But I mean, like, just demanding we continue to be stupid and do stupid things. That's the sum of our demand. Now, to the headlining act of the circus, the chief clowns. Here we are to talk about the stretch code. So, there is a building code, specialized stretch code. So there's a stretch code and specialized stretch code. The specialized stretch code, what it does is in new construction, it requires if the building that's being constructed is going to use oil or gas, that the building needs to be pre-wired for electrification later on, because, you know, green stuff, right? And that should also and somebody else makes that, I forget who, but somebody will make the point here at some point in these clips. In the long term, that actually saves the people that live there money. Because, of course, they're going to, in most cases, be paying their own utilities. Now, the city manager had, through his Department of Sustainability and Department of Economic Development, they had 2 weeks ago recommended that the council vote to pause the specialized stretch code, which they adopted in 2023 and went into effect July 1, 2024. And then we want to pause enforcement of this until a later time because it's hurting development. If you listen to the comments, basically developers said this is bad and is making them not want to build stuff, and so everybody's leaping to act. That's where we were 2 weeks ago. And then 2 weeks ago, Councilor King held the order, so they could not vote to hold it, to pause it. In the interim, the city manager finds out that which was plainly obvious to me, there is no pausing it. You opt in. It's a state law that you can opt into. The municipalities can opt into, and you're either in or you're out. There's no pause. That's not a thing. And then he also found out that that they can't opt out until 3 years after its implementation. That's the part's not really. They do discuss that they have to stay in for 3 years, but why isn't really discussed. The state building codes operate on 3-year cycles. So you stay in 3 years, and then if you want to adopt a different version of building codes, you can do that. If they go back to the stretch code, which is just regular building code, not base code, that's the different things, doesn't matter. But they can switch back to the stretch code, not the specialized stretch code, which would then new construction would not be required to do this pre-wiring for electrification of utilities, heating, etc. And it also has a small solar component that's required in the specialized stretch code. And so Councilor King got absolutely killed on the floor of the council 2 weeks ago for holding this. And what it did was, he didn't know that at the time. What he wanted was more information because, we hear a lot of, developers said, but until this meeting, it wasn't a whole lot of data about, they're talking about it gets more expensive. Okay, how much more expensive? We don't get that answer. Nonetheless, so councils are pissed off because they were about to vote on a thing that they can't even do. First, Councilor Bergman.
There's a lot to be said about where we're at right now on this, and I'm certainly not here to say that I am, or anyone on this council is happy with the outcome in the sense that we at least can't take a vote on it, and it would have been good to kind of take a vote on it. But I just want to go back a little in time. I did spend a good amount of time over the last week listening to the actual hearing or council meeting in which this item was voted on. I think it's important for background because there's been a lot of people that said, well, council voted for it the first time, so why are you thinking about changing your mind? And in the meeting that we voted on this, there were representations made that there would be incentives provided for the stretch code, so it would minimize the impact on developers. Truth is, not significant incentives have ever been provided. There was representations that this would bear no impact, or have no impact on the biomedical field. Well, the truth is it does. And we know from some of the developers in Worcester that have expressed concern about that. There was representations made that the cost would be cheaper up front than actually keeping it based on fuel as opposed to converting to electricity. So it would be cheaper to go with the specialized stretch code. That hasn't turned out to be true either. Nowhere was it said that parts were made out of the United States and difficult to obtain. Nowhere in that conversation was there a conversation about delays in those pieces of equipment that needed to be imported from other countries. So I make my decisions based on the information I receive that I believe is accurate. Say that I also made my decision that night based upon what I believe to be the opportunity for the city council to pull back on their enthusiasm for the specialized stretch code, if in fact it didn't turn out to be working out the way we had hoped it would.
So, now I'm going to get more into this in later clips, but based on the information that he received, that he believes is true, why didn't the committee meeting he's talking about, or meetings, why didn't they have somebody from the state office of, I forget what the acronym is for the division of the state that deals with this, but why didn't they have somebody from that division appear virtually at a committee meeting and ask them questions like this about opt-out, about, whatever it is they wanted to ask them about? Well, because they don't do that in the committees in our city, because the committees are absolutely worthless. They don't even write anything down in these committees, mind you. They say they're going to send it to committee for a report, and all that comes back is a recommendation on how to vote. And then whatever the people from the committee say in the full council meeting, they don't actually produce an actual report. That would be like doing work. Next on this is Council King.
I was excoriated on the council floor in the public sphere for holding this item. I'm glad I held it. I'm going to reiterate, it didn't have the data, didn't have the information, and that's more than true, Mr. Chairman. Also on the row, that development cost $166 million. It's sold for $157 million. Now, they also received, $2.5 million in HTIP, a $10.1 million tie. So you're talking about, $63.6 million in profit. To think that a few $100,000, $1 million would dissuade them from doing business with the city.
Exactly. Agree with that completely. You're cutting into profit margin, and that's never good in the eyes of people that are, and let's be clear, developers are there to make lots and lots of money. They're not there to be your partner. They're not there to whatever it is. They're there to make as much money as humanly possible. And the additional funding that Council King just mentioned at Alto on the Row, those are state, well, not the tie. The tie is a local tax incentive program, but HDIP is a state program. There's all kinds of state assistance programs as well. And so even though they actually sold the building for less than it cost to build it, they still made a significant profit building that building, you see. Is that profit margin being eaten into a little bit for this, because you need to implement the requirements of the specialized stretch code, is that sending people to other communities? I don't know. We hear all the time about how our city is growing, how the population of our city is growing. Meanwhile, the statewide population is decreasing, if you've seen in the news recently. So who's building housing in places where their population is decreasing? Maybe we don't actually have to bend over all the time, all the way for developers. This is City Manager Batista's response to some of those comments.
There was a lot of discussion on the last time we presented the item and made the recommendation of pausing. We were under the impression, based on our review of information, and the economic development team and myself and others are working to try to understand the implications of it, including the Commissioner of Inspectional Services, trying to understand the implications of what this could mean. We looked at all the possibilities of what are our options, and we felt as though the pausing was a valid option. There was indication, or we felt as though, based on previous information or information that we've known, that we felt as though that was the right decision. After the conversations that happened on this council floor, and the request to hold the item, it gave us the ability to further review that. So the solicitor, on her review, she provided her guidance to us And then she also then confirmed her review with the state, which aligned her review of the actual matter.
So once they gave it to the lawyer, the city solicitor, they realized that they couldn't do the thing that they had already proposed. I mean, just embarrassing. Just embarrassing. Just not having your stuff together. And that's fine. They'll take a pound of flesh from him, and we'll all move on. They screwed it up. Happens. Embarrassing, but happens. Next is, and here's where we get some actual data that wasn't in their report that they provided to council when, they asked the council to vote to delay, or whatever the word they're using is, pause this, enforcing the stretch code, which they, again, can't do, not allowed for in the law. You're in or you're out. So here's the mayor, and then the head of the Economic Development Department, Peter Dunn.
I'll be real quick, but the community come up to me, a lot of people who were very supportive of the stretch code, that this council is supportive of it. And one of the questions they kept on saying, one of the statements from me made is that we had a 44% increase in, I think, permits in the last year or so. And I just want to, what's that? Across the state. And I was just curious what our stats are here in the city of Worcester.
One of the things that I referenced specifically in the report to council is that there's a lot of conversation about comparing like the specialized stretch code and the performance of those buildings to the base code. Even just earlier tonight, there was reference to like it's 40 to 60% more efficient. But again, we need to be talking about what's the differential between the stretch code and the specialized stretch code, not the base code.
So tell us. No, see, it says what other people are saying, but it doesn't correct them. Well, so how much more efficient are they?
Standard buildings, because if we want to really evaluate the cost-benefit analysis and what might happen in terms of utility bills or just the overall energy performance of the building, we need to be talking about just what's in front of us, and that's the differential between the stretch code and the specialized stretch code. Mr. Antanovic looked at that specifically in terms of what we're talking about with new construction as well. Like, as we know, the specialized stretch code only refers to new construction, so we did try to take a look at our experience with new residential building permits from prior to when the specialized stretch code was adopted to now.
I asked Nancy, our operations manager, to run a couple of reports for me. We did a year before the council adopted it, a year after the council adopted it, and then we did a year before the activation date and a year after the activation date. What we did see was an increase in applications prior to the adoption, but what we've seen afterwards is, yes, there is an increase in permits from the year before to the year after. What we've seen, though, is a decrease in new residential permits from 130 down to 103. There's been a drop of 16% in new residential permits. We've seen an increase in the amount of renovations and repairs. So what that is people not wanting to take on the big projects and not wanting to upgrade to the new systems. They are doing lesser projects and not being bumped into the higher costs and the higher stringencies of the codes.
There's two statements there. One is the change in new residential permits. These are building permits now. These are not like planning permits or some other permit. They're going to put shovels in the ground. They're getting building permits. So let's do the second part first. That the increase in rehabs or renovation permits indicates directly that people are not doing bigger projects. Well, don't people renovate things like that? Unless you talk to the people that are pulling the renovation permits, unless there's more information, unless there's more data behind that statement, it's a lot of it seems like speculation. More importantly, the decrease from 130 to 103 new residential building permits. Well, if you're talking about evaluating, new construction, because the purpose is to lower the out of control prices that we've seen, then we shouldn't be talking about number of permits and number of projects. We should be talking about units. At another point in the meeting, Peter Dunn says that after the code, there is a project that has, for example, 100 units in it. Well, what is the average number of units per those permits? Are we building more units at 103 permits or less? Probably less. It would seem like it would be less, but at 16% fewer permits, it means you're only going to make 16% up on the average per project, right? So it could be much closer in the number of units, and the number of units is what matters, and that's never discussed here. So if there is less projects but similar or more units, have we lost ground? It's a different discussion now, isn't it? Next, Gary Rosen, who wins the award for the best comment of the night throughout this circus.
Now, some said tonight, I don't want to criticize. I don't know. We have a job to do here.
Hallelujah!
Okay, and this was, 2 weeks ago, I was among 7 or 8 of us who was adamant I wanted to hold this. I wanted to pause it. I shouldn't say hold it. I wanted to pause it.
That's the one flaw here is there is no pause. You're in or you're out.
And I felt that was a good decision at the time, and I still do. If we didn't have this 3-year commitment, I'd be voting tonight to pause it. But what worries me, what concerns me, is that 4 of our departments, our city manager and economic development, especially who a few weeks ago were saying, Rosen, you should support the pause because it's the right thing to do. I just can't accept the fact that we didn't know. If we're going to run a city government that way by people saying, I'm sorry, we didn't know, not acceptable to me. So I won't go along with the councilors who say, I don't want to place the blame. I'm just saying it's not acceptable. It better not happen again. If we're going to accept it again, then that means we'll accept it again and again and again. I won't.
Hallelujah, Gary. Hallelujah. Exactly. And you know what? They will accept it again and again and again. That's not to say the city manager is going to screw up a bunch of stuff. That's not what I'm implying. I'm saying they'll accept it. Because, they're largely indifferent to most things. Councilor Blotta on the specialized stretch code.
I want to say I think this is why it's so important as a council for us to do our due diligence and take time and research. And I know, things like this do happen. And I know, but when we talk about housing development, the stretch code has not had a significant impact on slowing housing down in the city. And, and that's credit to our economic development team and the city manager for, stitching together the different programs that the state is offering by providing incentives and that's what we should be doing. And I think we should be doing what Boston is doing as well, which is putting together more incentives to balance out the construction of housing that saves residents money and that is better for the environment. It's possible to do both.
Yes. And lastly on this, Councilor Bergman again.
Some people in the audience think that, we have a gift beyond the average human being, that every time we vote for something, it has to be the right decision. I'm going to admit, I'm not going to speak for anyone else, I've made a couple bad decisions in my time on the council. And I'd like to know, when I make those bad decisions, that they can be undone, or at least have the information before I take those decisions. But let me also say something else, and I don't have to ask either the department heads that are in front of me. It's something I know intuitively. There's nobody, no other colleague of mine or anyone else that's going to ever convince me that the cities and towns in Massachusetts that don't have the specialized stretch code are at a disadvantage compared to Worcester that has it as far as attracting developers. It just doesn't make any sense.
So a few things on that. That would have been the case when you voted for this in 2023. In 2023, there was already a housing crisis. So where were these considerations then? But there's a much bigger bigger issue here. And that is, it's very apparent, and even, Councilor Rosen kind of said it as well. There's this belief that the role of a city councilor in a city manager system is to just get things and look at them and say yes or no. And that's not true. That's not true. They're saying that they want things and they need to be accurate and all this. That, one, isn't true, and two, isn't the nature of politics. Look, take away cynicism about politics for a second, which is very difficult. Believe me, I'm with you. But politics is about competing agendas. People who have different views of how to get to a better place, competing to implement their view, right? And so when they're getting reports from the city manager, they're getting the perspective of the city manager's administration. And they don't believe that they need to do any due diligence about that. Councilor Ballot is right. Should be doing due diligence. They believe that everything should be spoon-fed to them, and they make their decisions based on what's been spoon-fed to them. Our committees don't do anything of substance, mostly. For example, the committee that heard this, why weren't they getting people from the state to answer questions, or getting whatever? Have developers come in and talk about it, but do it in the open. Don't do, well, developers told me. What's that based on, what they're telling you? Of course they don't like it. What's that matter? I don't like a lot of things. Nobody cares. But, some developer told you that this is costing me. Well, is it costing you? Because we didn't hear that either. We didn't hear anything about the, average cost of the regulations in the specialized stretch code versus total cost of projects or any of that. No perspective on what the costs actually are. Is this 1% of projects? If it's a bigger project, or, we have no idea what the actual cost differentiation is. It's not been presented at all. No one seems to care. Now, outside of this issue, though, this is the biggest problem, I think, at the moment, at least in my brain, with this council. Is that's what they think. They think everything should be, they just look at stuff and decide. They're the deciders. That's not their role. In city manager systems, the city manager is supposed to be an operations person, that is what Eric Batista is. He's an operations person. He is supposed to do. Policy is supposed to originate with the city council. They say he does. That's how it's supposed to work. As far as what policy is and what's going to be implemented, not, every decision with employees and all of that. No, that's management decisions, very much in his domain. But policy is supposed to originate from the city council, and they don't do that at all. Very, very little. There might be aspects of things that come from committees or was from input from committees or councilors. By and large, policy comes from the city manager's office, his administration. I'm fairly convinced, in my mind, that it's a almost total fear of having to say anything. Because if they're doing the policy, they have to get votes. You see, the city manager doesn't, so they can use him as a shield because it's not their policy. So if you don't say anything, you can't be held accountable for anything. You don't actually do anything. There's nothing to hold you accountable for. If the policy is not going to come from you, look at the policy that's being implemented and for its effectiveness in whatever. You heard me, if you listen to this podcast at all, you've heard me talk about accountability at the police department in various degrees. Ensure that accountability is happening. But they're not going to do that. You see, they want to just get spoon-fed stuff and then decide and be the deciders. They treat that place like a country club. They make up their own rules on the fly about what it is their role is. They run for a job and then they decide what the job is. It's absurd. It's absurd. And we've seen it, especially with the police department. They are just allergic to oversight. They don't like the word. They don't checks and balances. They have an ideological disposition against checks and balances. And I'm speaking to the majority kind of Mayor Petty's coalition, which is most of the council in this term. The folks outside of the mayor's the mayor's coalition is probably Councilor King, Councilor Ojeda, and Councilor Blada, and then you have some swing with Councilor Rosen. But there's a firm majority coalition in the council, and they're allergic. I mean, they're just allergic to oversight. That's not our job. What is your job? To get spoon-fed stuff and read it and go, yeah, okay, because that's what they do. 99% of the time. That's the problem. Is there's no real job. They're not actually doing a job. I don't know what they're doing. District councilors, what they're the part of the job that is, constituent services. That's a whole different thing, and they don't have a choice, most of them, but to work pretty hard on that because their phone just blows up. But as far as what happens in that room, not much of anything. Yeah, I think I've said this before here, but I've said it elsewhere. We need full-time counselors so we can have committees that will be charged with actually doing stuff and not being a sideshow, not being a performance, a staged performance, where they have not the ability but the right not to reports framed from the city manager's administration's perspective, but they have a right to get data, and department heads and other employees have an obligation to appear before committees and answer questions truthfully. And then there needs to be some teeth behind that for people that come to committees and don't tell the full truth. And we just don't, these folks aren't going to do anything even remotely close to going in that direction where they actually do stuff. City government's a joke in the city. You have an appointed executive who pretty much does it all, and they go yes, almost all of the time, without any investigation or inquiry. Sure. Oh, this is what you're doing? Cool. It's a country club. They treat it like a country club. They disrespect that place that, I'm not a big, love the city, love your country. I think it's weird. How do you love a country? You care about people. But just no respect for the job. They don't want to do anything. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. It's not the way it is in other places. Even in this state, it's not the way it is in other places. Cambridge has a city manager system, for example. Granted, they have a lot more money than us. Much smaller place with a much bigger budget. But the city manager there is just no slight on Eric Batista. But the city manager there is, I think he ran a division of Mass General Hospital at one point. He's done some stuff. He's, again, no slight to the city manager. He's just a more experienced guy. He's an older guy, more experienced. It doesn't run like that there. It's kind of irrelevant, really, who the person is that is the city manager. There's a system that's supposed to operate, and they don't operate it. And it's been like that here forever. So what you get is insulated. You have an administration that's insulated within itself because it just hears, complaints from the public, but there's no role where people are spending time doing inquiry and oversight, seeing if the things they're doing are working and working in the way as anticipated. And they're not going to do anything about it because this is really good for them. They don't have to do stuff. They can deflect responsibility about anything that goes wrong, and they get to show up on Tuesday and complain about residents, basically. That residents are the source of all of their problems. Like, if it weren't for the residents, this job would be great, right? It's broken. It's very, 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 very broken. And certainly the folks in power are not going to do anything about it. What we need is full-time counselors with very heavy reform on the roles of our committees. We need to have 5 people on a committee. Having 3 people is stupid. They can't even talk. They're not even supposed to talk to each other. When there's 3 people in a committee, they're not even supposed to talk to each other about, outside of the meeting, about anything that could potentially come before that committee. They're not supposed to even talk about it because you can't. The law, open meeting law, is you can't have a majority of a committee meeting outside of the committee meeting. Well, if there's 5 people, then 2 people can talk to each other. You see, So, that's just one example. And if you're going to have 5 people on a committee, well, you're going to need to have more committee assignments to fulfill all the responsibilities of the number of committees needed. And there's no time for that when you have part-time counselors. And then, you have counselors who are so uninterested in what their committees do. They just stack the meeting before the full city council meeting on Tuesday. The Public Safety Committee has met one time this year. It's April 30th. They met one time. I mean, and the other counselors that are not in that committee actually do hold some of the responsibility for that because they should be introducing orders. But they're not going to go anywhere, but they just introduce them anyway. Like looking at the 2 lawsuits that the city paid over $2.25 million last year for 2 people who had their freedom stolen from them for crimes they did not commit. So let me reiterate the most important point here. It was an interesting night, but it was absolutely a circus. And obviously I have a bias here, but just put into stark contrast once again how very, very broken and what little the folks that we elect actually do, at least at City Hall. Again, I don't want to take anything away from district councilors who deal with constituent issues because that's a job in and of itself. And they think they're doing what they're supposed to do. Ask them, they'll tell you. We're doing a great job. They're not. They don't do anything. And they don't want to do anything. They want to keep things exactly the way they are because everything's great. Police union endorsed 7 of them. Developers love those same 7. Everything's perfect. How could anything be better? Some of the stuff was ridiculous. Some of it was decent, but it really just, again, it highlights just how broken Worcester city government really is. Thanks for tuning in. We will do this again in the future. I hope to have some news on future podcast stuff soon. Look out for some new features coming up on the website here in the short term. And keep reading. We will try to screw it up less next time. Deuces.